listener production.
Hey, Tara Cassidy with you and welcome to The Briefing. Our very own Antoinette Lattouf won her unfair dismissal case against the ABC just little over a fortnight ago. So what's it like going from reporting the news to becoming the news? And what does she make of some of the criticism?
If by sharing facts, by having integrity, by speaking truth to power, giving a voice to voiceless, if that is what you want to call activist journalists, cool, bro.
That chat with Ant is coming up in the second half of this episode. First, though, let's get into the headlines with Chris Spiru. It's Thursday, the 10th of July.
Hey Tara, and to you listening. Some experts are raising concerns that the government's rushing through legislation to combat abuse in childcare centres, saying it's a knee-jerk reaction that won't address fundamental issues allowing the abuse to go unnoticed. It follows the arrest of 26-year-old Joshua Brown, an alleged pedophile charged with over 70 offences relating to 8 children at a Melbourne centre. Since those charges, 2 childcare giants that employed Brown have agreed to install CCTV cameras.
G8 announced it would roll out cameras in its several hundred centres, while Good Start Early Learning has been installing them in new centres since 2022. However, it did reiterate that active supervision was key to safeguarding kids, not cameras. Now, the move's been welcomed by the government, which is set to introduce new legislation to better prevent such crimes later this month, and giving it the ability to cut funding to centres that don't meet safety standards. But some experts and providers have warned that this is just one piece of the puzzle, with the Queensland Education Minister now pushing for a national childcare register, saying CCTV cameras may also introduce other risks.
We need to make sure we look at trials and we consider all the other aspects of whether people are happy to have their children filmed all day, whether it's protecting staff or whether there's going to be invasion of civil liberties.
Meanwhile, the United Workers Union has highlighted other areas that need to be addressed, like lack of staff, turnover and recruitment issues, which it says leads to poor training, supervision and support and gaps in safety protocols.
Yeah, and interestingly, there was another point that was made that if these, say, cameras are rolled out in 17,000 or so centres across the country, Chris, what's to say that that footage then doesn't fall into the wrong hands? You know, we've just seen some of the biggest banks, corporations, even Qantas this week go through those data breaches. And here you'll kind of have vision of sleeping children, which, you know, it's a good point. It might seem far-fetched, but we've literally just seen this. So it's not that it's not plausible.
Overseas now, where Europe's top court has become the first international court in the world to find Russia responsible for the downing of flight MH17 that claimed 298 lives, including 38 Australians. The Malaysia Airlines flight was shot down in July 2014 as it flew over eastern Ukraine on its way from Amsterdam to Kuala Lumpur. Moscow has always denied any involvement, including that it had supplied missiles to Ukrainian separatists.
And the European Court of Human Rights also found that Russia had committed major violations of international law during its invasion of Ukraine by performing indiscriminate military attacks, summary executions of civilians, and torture, including the use of rape as a weapon of war. Now, a Kremlin spokesperson has called these findings null and void, as Russia had withdrawn from the International Court's jurisdiction back in 2023, Chris.
Yeah, and separately, overnight, we got confirmation that Russia has launched another record-breaking aerial attack on Ukraine, this time firing off 728 drones and 13 missiles, mostly aimed at the country's west. Ukraine's military says most were shot down, but one of its air bases was hit and damaged. Now, this all comes, and why this timing is very, very suspicious and interesting, Tara, is because it comes as Donald Trump yesterday confirmed the US would be sending more weapons and defense systems to Kyiv, and that he was considering further sanctions on Russia amid failing ceasefire negotiations. Here's a little bit of what Trump had to say yesterday.
That was a war that should have never happened, and a lot of people are dying, and it should end. And I don't know, we get a lot of bullshit thrown at us by Putin, for you want to know the truth. It's very nice all the time, but it turns out to be meaningless.
Yeah, so very interesting change of tune from the US president there.
Elon Musk's artificial intelligence startup xAI says it's working to take down posts from its chatbot after it made positive references to Hitler. Users have shared screenshots of Grok suggesting the Nazi leader would be the best person to tackle anti-white hate, and another where it called itself Mecha Hitler, a nod to a 90s video game character.
Yeah, and it doesn't stop there, Tara. The chatbot recently called Poland's Prime Minister Donald Tusk a ginger whore. That's a quote there. Those aren't my words. And made offensive posts celebrating the Texas floods, referring to the child victims who died as future fascists. Musk's startup says they are actively working to remove the content and updating the AI, thanking the millions of users on X who quickly identified the content.
And Grok's now been blocked in Turkey after also making offensive comments about its president and has been referred to the European Commission by Poland, Chris. I mean, I don't know. I just think every second day we're hearing more and more about AI and it just surpassing what we think it can do and acting on its own. And it freaks me out. And I just think, why are we making this stuff without coming up with like rules and policies and laws first? Like, come on, common sense here, everyone.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing. And this isn't going to help your...
my irrational fear?
Yeah, it's not going to help your irrational fear in the slightest, because experts have long said that large language models like Grok, they're kind of like a black box. No one really understands how they work. What we do know is that they are trained by humans and that they are trained on human behavior. And it's just those engineers pointing them in those certain directions. Now, the thing about Grok is you can access it like ChatGPT. You can pop in questions to it and things like that, but it mostly lives on Twitter or X. And what you do is you tag Grok in the comments. You can ask Grok questions. So if you've seen this video that looks a little sus, you can go, hey, at Grok, is this video real? Or Grok, what do you think of this situation? So most of the time it's quite good. It's quite factual, but reports suggest a recent update over the weekend gave it instructions to not shy away from political incorrectness. Now, I don't know about you, Tara, but I think we have enough of that around us in the world around us. We do not need the robots jumping on this train too.
A surging number of young Aussies claim that they are unable to work due to crippling depression, PTSD and anxiety, and life insurers say it's leading them into a compensation crisis. With mental health problems on the rise, insurers say they're receiving a staggering increase in total and permanent disability claims, amounting to an increase of over $1 billion in 5 years. So in 2019, such claims were sitting at $1.2 billion, while last year they jumped to $2.2 billion, Chris. That's a massive spike.
Yeah, it is. And burnout, bullying and stress are among the top reasons cited, along with financial issues, mood disorders, traumatic experiences and divorce. But now insurers have shared their concern after data showed there'd been a more than 700% increase in people in their 30s making permanent disability-related claims over a 9-year period. The chair of the Council of Australian Life Insurers has warned it won't be able to keep up with the payouts.
Yeah, and some insurers are now calling for a tighter definition of what can actually be claimed as a mental health-related disability, with such claims making up over 40% of payouts last year. And look, I know that they obviously want to crack down on, they're going to say this is a loophole and that some people are doing the wrong thing, but the reality is we know, because we've seen it with wait times and lacking resources and not enough people in the sector, there's obviously this massive issue where we have all these people, an increasing amount of people that are suffering with mental health issues, and we don't have the resources to keep up. So this is just another flow-on effect, I think.
It's over! The police just don't get orange! And Tommy did it! This one's for you!
Oh, Tara.
That's right. The sentiment on every Queenslander's lips this morning, Chris. I'm sorry I had to do that to you. With the State of Origin Shield back in the Sunshine State after an emotion-charged win in last night's Origin decider.
Queensland's night. It might be the most remarkable origin story ever written.
That it was a history-making win for the Mighty Maroons, becoming the first ever Queensland team to reclaim the State of Origin title with consecutive wins on the road, thanks to a 24-12 victory in Sydney.
Yeah, and look, all right, well-deserved, congratulations. But, you know, the Maroons were doing it for their grieving captain, Cameron Munster, who just days ago lost his dad. Munster says it's been incredibly overwhelming, the support he's received from all corners of the rugby community.
Someone else is going to lose their mum, their dad eventually, and I'll definitely know who's reached out, and I'll be forever grateful and be able to reach out to them, because a lot of those guys were probably from the New South Wales team, and look, just shows the character of rugby league.
Yeah, and coach Billy Slater says seeing Munster play, given what he was going through, is the most courageous thing he's seen.
I don't know how he did it, but within 10 minutes of sitting with him in his room on Sunday morning, he looked at me and he said, "Bill, I'm playing." And I know he wanted to. I know his dad would have wanted him to. And boy, that's one proud dad sitting up there watching his boy tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know if you were watching the game last night, Chris. It was incredibly emotional. As soon as the team won, the players just got around Munster, who absolutely broke down into their arms, including into his coach, Billy Slater's. And I'll admit, I found it hard to keep back tears watching it. It was really beautiful. And I am stoked. I'm obviously stoked about the win, but I'm incredibly happy that they've done this in front of an 80,000 strong crowd for Munster. And can't forget, Tom Dearden also got named man of the match, 2 tries, and he also got the Wally Lewis medal. I mean, what a game. What a game.
Yeah, what a game. A game that I switched off after we copped a try in the first 8 minutes. So I'm glad you are here to report back to us. Hey, that is it for headlines for today. Up next is Helen Smith's chat with our very own Antoinette Lattouf, just 2 weeks after her federal court win against the ABC. Stick around, that chat is coming up for you next.
Antoinette Lattouf has been part of the briefing team since 2022 and is the host of the Weekend Briefing. But in December 2023, Antoinette was fired from the ABC midway through a 5-day casual radio stint after sharing a Human Rights Watch post accusing Israel for using starvation as a tool of war in Gaza. With the federal court ruling late last month that she was unfairly terminated for reasons including her political opinion after pressure from pro-Israeli lobbyists, and was awarded at least $70,000. Antoinette joins us now to unpack how she felt during the trial that made global headlines, her response to accusations of bias, and why she's determined to keep speaking out about human rights atrocities in Gaza. Antoinette, it's been just over 2 weeks since your verdict was handed down, and you've said you've had a little bit of time to process it. What have the last 2 weeks been like?
It's been a combination of things. It was a bit of a fog and a blur. The first few days I was actually shell-shocked, as in I couldn't actually process anything. I actually had for the first time some out-of-body experiences where I was like, I cannot, is this really happening? The amount of, attention globally and nationally, the conversations, the amount of media around the world reaching out, it was just so much. I didn't know how to process it, so I was just walking around. And I wanted to stay at home and not talk to anybody and not be seen by anybody. I felt incredibly exposed and a little bit vulnerable. The first night I thought I would have an opportunity to exhale, to be vindicated, to have literally done nothing wrong and yet having to go through this awful ordeal. But then the first night, just as where my hubby and I are going to bed, he gets a message, the latest death threat, which has gone to his work.
Yeah.
And so then on the phone to police, and I was just like, my Lord, I don't even get a night of rest. I didn't even get a night to feel victorious. And so now it's sinking in a little bit, but I don't think the full magnitude of it has sunk in.
Did it feel like a win after that day?
To be honest, it felt like a win irrespective of the verdict. I honestly had decided that no matter what happened, that I had won. I had won because I had defended myself. I had won because I knew I took an enormous hit financially, psychologically, physically for something that was much more important than me. And that was the ongoing humanitarian crisis in Gaza and an ABC, which I have for my entire life been really passionate about, a compromised ABC. And so I was proud that I did that because I think so few people would actually take that stance. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm defining my own win and getting to that stage and getting through the trial and withstanding all of the attacks. I was like, okay, I've won.
Through this whole time, I've been producing you, working with you, and I've seen you. It's been pretty hard watching you because, you're Ant. I'm like, oh my God, I love being able to work with you and learn from you. But it did take a toll coming in, every week, coming in to do the weekend briefing.
Yeah.
What was that like?
Yeah, I think it was obviously really hard. And you saw me. There were times when I would just have a little sob to myself in the studio because there were so many different moments at which I was nearly broken or was broken and had to kind of patch myself back together and keep going. I felt that I needed to keep working. Well, it was the only work I continued to have. Everything, listener and the briefing team have been so supportive and backing me, but you also work with me. You know who I am. You know my values. You know my skills. And so I actually felt so happy to come in because it was one place in which I wasn't under attack and it was one place in which I could just do what I do. And, I think outside of all of this, it's easy to forget that I am a person who has a lot to offer the media landscape. And I liked the ability to do that. But there were times, depending on the subject matter or depending on where I was at within this trial or within the public-facing stuff, where it was very hard. But I showed up every week and I showed up for our listeners and I showed up for you. And also I showed up for me just to remind myself that, well, this is who I am and I should never shrink myself and I should continue to do what I'm good at doing.
Yeah. And I don't even think you hardly took leave throughout that time. And it was bloody impressive, amazing. But, you have been in journalism and news for over 20 years.
Yeah.
I'm going to throw a wild guess out there. This is not the first time you've been discriminated against. You're a Lebanese woman.
Yes.
You present Lebanese as well.
Yes.
What made this incident?
I think a couple of things. I had more power and privilege than younger Antoinette, who had to cop a lot of crap and just keep going because I felt that I was grateful to be in the industry. I was the first Arab female in commercial television on screen, and I knew that, those things had impact for broader audiences and for my community and for other people who didn't think that they had a place in the media. So on the one hand, I had more power and privilege, but on the other hand, again, there was such enormous suffering and I could not stand and say nothing when I could see that the political and media class were beholden to lobbyists. I went into journalism to give a voice to the voiceless and speak truth to power, and that is exactly what I did. And it was at a time when I had more power so that I could withstand it and it wouldn't entirely ruin me.
And going back to, the ABC, it's the ABC. You dream of working there as a young journo, it's the ABC.
Absolutely. It's the best we've got.
It's a public broadcaster, right?
Yeah.
Did you ever think that you'd be in a situation where you'd be going against the ABC rather than a purely commercial organisation?
I mean, no, I never thought I would be in that situation. And I have no doubt that what is happening at the ABC is echoed across different media outlets across the country in various forms, particularly to the pressure exerted on its coverage of Israel's atrocities. It's just that the public has a right to know and a buy-in in the ABC that they don't in commercial outfits. It's taxpayer funded. It's answerable to the public. It is for the public. And by its charter, it needs to be independent. Now we found out more than $2 million was spent fighting me.
Yeah.
Wild. Can you imagine how many journalists could be funded in that? And so I never anticipated that I would have to fight the ABC for as long as I did. But it was because the Australian public deserves better.
So obviously what kicked this all off was coverage relating to the war in Gaza. You've been accused of being an activist journalist, and Israel, Gaza has been, and still is, a very divisive, polarising topic for many people around the world. How do you discuss it without being accused of bias?
I just think activist journalist is a weapon, and it's a label used to discredit certain journalists. And it's because, again, which was shown in the court ruling, that the ABC bowed to pressure from pro-Israel lobbyists. It's a way to stifle any dissent or fair coverage of what is happening in Gaza. And my experience is not an isolated one. More than 100 BBC journalists just signed a petition asking for the BBC to stop doing PR for Israel. There are journalists in France who've held strikes. There's petitions in Australia. There is this overwhelming sense that journalism is failing its basic principle. And so to brandish me an activist journalist for sharing a Human Rights Watch post, one of the most reputable organisations in the world, that the ABC also reported on twice, a factual piece of information that Israel is using starvation as a tool of war, which it continues to use as a tool of war. I mean, it's quite laughable. And so if by sharing facts, by having integrity, by speaking truth to power, giving a voice to voiceless. If that is what you want to call activist journalists, cool, bro.
I know, and we'll get into this a little bit later, but your episode you've done with Jan Fran, you talk about journalism and covering controversial stories and journalists as being truth tellers and journalists as kind of, isn't that the point of it being a journalist? Like,
yeah, absolutely.
Is that not the point?
Yeah,
to be controversial sometimes?
So Jan Fran and I, and many of you may know Jan Fran because she used to be a co-host of The Briefing. We have a podcast called We Used to Be Journos in which we analyse the media landscape and try and combat misinformation and a bunch of things. And I mean, if the litmus test for what is considered controversial is that someone disagrees with it, well, then everything is controversial.
Yeah.
And so if that is what the ABC wants to essentially say is controversial, because on the stand, some of their most senior editorial leaders were like, well, it was controversial because Israel denied it. So cool, I'm just going to deny everything. I'm going to deny I'm brunette. I'm going to deny, you know what I mean? And then it becomes just controversial because I denied it, even when it's a verified fact. And so even though this was an employment law verdict, so much of it in the discussion around it and the coverage has become broader questions about journalism and the state of journalism.
Your lawyer, Josh Bornstein, is a Jewish man, and a lot of the complaints over you being on the ABC came from pro-Israeli Australians and lobbyists. What did it mean having a Jewish lawyer?
Well, he's wonderful. Josh Bornstein is wonderful. He's part of the Jewish Council of Australia, and I think it's really essential to have voices like him in the public, but also in the legal sector, because as a Jewish person, he is vehemently opposed to human rights atrocities. He's vehemently opposed to quashing political opinion or public protest because of the actions of the State of Israel. He can separate the actions of the State of Israel with people of his faith. And it's something that I think the political class and the media class in Australia have really tried to conflate, that an attack on one is an attack on both, and then everybody's anti-Semitic and it's just awful and stop doing your job. And it's incredible to work with him on this because the attacks weren't just on me, they were on him too. They were coming from his community as well, from some of the extremists within that community, attacking him for taking that stand and for representing me.
Now, your podcast called We Used to Be Journos, your new one, can you unpack that? Do you still identify as a journalist?
Oh, look, it was just a bit like kind of tongue-in-cheek because we say we used to write the news and we were the news and then we were broken by the news and then we were told we're not really journalists, that we're just activists, which is just a handy little label to try and discredit us. And so, yes, I think, of course we are journalists, but we really wanted to use all of our experience over the years and also our social media following and our profiles to shine a light back on an industry that we are very passionate about, but we think in many ways needs to do better. And also to crucially arm audiences with the tools to spot disinformation, to spot spin, to unpack and decode headlines. And we just thought that something was missing because there is such little trust in legacy media outlets and more people are turning to social media, which in some ways is good, but in other ways is really problematic. So we thought, well, why don't we exist in those areas online and try and use our skills for good?
Yeah. Media literacy, we need it.
Yes.
Since 2023, when you got fired, your socials have been going insane. You've been getting tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands now. You're over 100,000 followers on Instagram.
Yeah. And quite popular on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
It's very strange.
They love you on there. Your posts always pop off. So big on LinkedIn, big on socials. You've just become like this global headline name. How is dealing with that?
I mean, I've always been the same person.
Yeah.
The only other thing that would be different is now there's a bit of an expectation. Like I feel a lot of people are turning to me. Like they'll say things, I get beautiful messages. But then when people send me something like, you are the light in these really dark times. You are our leader, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I'm the light in your dark times. Okay. Can you like get a candle or something? There's a lot.
You still crack the same lame jokes. Like here you are. Yeah.
And I'm like, I didn't try solar. Like I didn't subscribe to being the light of anything. And so it comes with responsibility. And I think I want to use that wisely and fairly.
Yeah. I mean, looking back on it all now, what do you hope people and companies, even those outside of the media industry, because when people talk about Gaza, no matter what industry they're in, they are getting backlash.
Yeah. There's like doctors, nurses, artists, academics, everybody, so many people are being sacked or stood down over the same thing. And not everybody has, I guess, the platform or the resources to do what I did.
Yeah.
But hopefully that will give employers a backbone to back their staff when they're being attacked, unfairly attacked, and to really consider, is a staff member a liability because they have eyes and a heart and they dare to use it in these really dystopian times?
Well, Antoinette, I will see you next week.
Yes, and I'll have the same lame jokes.
Yes. I'm ready. I'm ready for the Aldi special buy section. Yes. But thank you so much for joining us on The Briefing.
Thank you.
That was Antoinette Lattouf there. And that's it for this episode of The Briefing. We'd love it if you could share this ep with someone else you think might enjoy it as well. It's a really easy way you can support everything we do here at The Briefing. And we'd love you to subscribe or follow us on Instagram at The Briefing Podcast. I'm Helen Smith. Catch you next time.